The sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the... Oh, excuse me, I mean The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom got a brand new trailer, and with it came a solid release date and an actual title. But that's not all that was revealed. This brief teaser was packed full of story hints and gameplay details to pick apart. So let's break down everything we managed to find. The trailer opens on a wall carving of a figure with long ears. We don't know exactly who this person is, but we have a good guess that we'll get into when they show up again in just a moment. But first is another carving depicting an army of bokoblins and moblins attacking a group of people wielding swords and shields with an unfamiliar insignia. It's close to a couple other symbols we've seen in Zelda before, perhaps most similar to the Skyloft crest from Skyward Sword, but not actually a match. The army of monsters is also surrounded by familiar maroon squiggles that almost certainly represent malice. Coming back to that first figure, we now see them on a floating platform surrounded by 7 objects that look a bit like spirally inverted teardrops. These objects are extremely similar to the amber relics in Skyward Sword, but they could also be the titular tears of this game. 7 has always been a significant number throughout Zelda's history. For example, there were 7 sages with 7 medallions in Ocarina of Time, as well as 7 maidens trapped in crystals in A Link to the Past. While Breath of the Wild had just 4 divine beasts and a lack of Zelda's usual dungeon structure, this motif of 7 objects around a central figure could mean Tears of the Kingdom will have you on a quest to collect them, more like those earlier Zelda games. Next, we see a person either floating or being lifted into the air, followed by a shot of them holding hands with someone off screen. This figure is a dead ringer for Zelda herself, or at least some version of her throughout history. And the image of her in the air could even be a hint toward her fate, since we already saw her falling into an abyss in a previous trailer. As for who she's holding hands with, jumping forward to the logo reveal shows the rest of this image zoomed out. From there, we can see she's holding hands with that same central character from before, and 2 of those tears are shining down upon them from above. Given this interaction, as well as the fact that both characters are depicted with triangles under their eyes and in extremely similar outfits, our best guess is that this figure could represent the goddess Hylia herself. Zelda is actually the mortal reincarnation of Hylia in Skyward Sword, and the goddess is said to have raised a chunk of world up to the clouds in that game, similar to how she's first shown here, not to mention the floating islands Tears of the Kingdom revolves around. There's also some writing on the sides of this mural, but it doesn't seem to be any script from the Zelda series that we know about as of yet. But enough wall art, because there's real gameplay to get into as well. The action kicks off with Link opening a massive door that features the same twin dragons that are featured as an Ouroboros in the game's logo. He's also got a shield with a new symbol, one seemingly related to the Sheikahs based on the similar eye design. As he runs out into a floating island in the sky, you can see his right arm has already been altered like in previous trailers. But what's new is that he's carrying something on his belt in place of the Sheikah sleeve, a small set of vials, half of which are filled with a green glowing light. This object is extremely reminiscent of the Vessel of Light that Link and Midna used to collect Tears of Light in Twilight Princess, which would fit the new title nicely, though you do also collect tears in Skyward Sword. It could also just be a new type of resource that's consumed to use powers, like the magic meter in older games. Either way, it's featured prominently on the official art that accompanied this trailer and is surely an important part of this game. When Link jumps off, we can see a large structure in the background that was spotted in previous trailers. He also seems to be incredibly high up, as it takes a few seconds before the ground below even comes into view. Down on the surface, Link appears to use one of his new abilities to send a chunk of ruins up into the sky, riding it along the way. This looks to be in the Faron region, which is covered in ruins from the Zonai, an ancient civilization only hinted at through the environment of the first game, but one that seems to have more relevance in this one. For example, the dragons in its circular logo are almost identical to large Zonai statues that can be found in Breath of the Wild. As Link ascends, you can also catch a glimpse of some floating islands covered in storm clouds, which could possibly hint that not all floating areas are easily accessible at first. This could also be true of the next shot, which shows Link climbing up roots on the side of a floating island, the rest of which is a black texture that looks a bit like the other unclimbable surfaces in Breath of the Wild. Finally, the last shot of the trailer is a long one, packed with goodies hidden in the background. First off, Link is falling somewhere over the Tanagar Canyon, and from here we get a clear look at both plenty of sky islands, including a notably large one high above what we think is the Faron region, as well as the ground of Hyrule. Hyrule Castle is floating too, which we saw start to happen in the first trailer, and the bright red tendrils or energy or whatever that stuff is from back then seems to be shooting out from under it. The same stuff seems to be spewing out of Death Mountain too. Something you won't see is the Ridgeland Tower that used to be jutting out of this marsh. In fact, any shrines and towers that were previously visible from here have vanished along with Link's Sheikah Slate. But don't worry, this sweet glider he lands on surely makes up for that, complete with more cryptic symbols that could relate to the ones we saw earlier. It's not clear if Link is controlling the glider or if it's heading to a predetermined spot, but it seems to be going toward a neon green pattern of lines on the Illumeni Plateau, previously just the location of a stone talus fight. There's also some sort of large cube on the ground visible just below the right wing of the glider that definitely wasn't there in Breath of the Wild. And before the scene fades out, you can spot a glowing green spiral on a small hill at the bottom left of the screen. This matches the spiral coming off of the corpse Link and Zelda find in the first trailer, as well as the power emanating from Link's hand. It's also very similar to the green tendril spotted in an earlier trailer when Link flies up and into a floating island, which may indicate that there are more of these, which act as sort of elevator points that allow Link to quickly travel upwards at certain spots across the land. As the trailer wraps up with the logo, we're treated to that full wall art and the Zonai Dragon Ouroboros we mentioned earlier, as well as an altered Master Sword. The tip of it is similar to both the green line symbols on the plateau and the general aesthetic of Twilight Princess. Also, just to address the elephant in the room, we compared the English and Japanese versions of the logo and are fairly confident the title is intended to be Tears of the Kingdom, as in crying, not Tears of the Kingdom, as in ripping. However, the potentially intentional double meaning there could be cool to look out for, as Hyrule certainly seems to be tearing itself apart. No matter how you pronounce it, we'll have lots more coverage of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom leading up to its launch on May 12, 2023. So for more of that and anything else gaming, keep it right here on IGN.